But one farmer says, seems to me there was a tea party in Boston that was illegal too.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold.
We shall seek to establish and maintain a dollar which will not change its purchasing and debt-paying power during the succeeding generation.
As anguished shrieks rose up from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange.
Government credit and government currency are really one and the same thing. A reserve of gold and a small reserve of silver.
Why do central banks hold it?
Well, it's a form of reserves.
Why don't they hold diamonds?
Well, it's tradition, long-term tradition.
All right, welcome back to the JUNIUS MALTBY channel. Here we are. I've been away for a little while, as many of you are well aware, but it's good to be back, and it's good to come back on days like this. Dow tanking 800 points, worst day of 2019 after the bond market sends recession warning. The yield on the 2-year Treasury notes topped the 10-year rate, a so-called yield curve inversion that has been a precursor to past recessions. And we've seen a lot of discussion in recent media outlets talking about predictions of anywhere from 6 to 9 months, major recession possibly occurring. There's things taking place in the mortgage world, the housing markets, and a lot of the so-called economic experts are pointing to a recession. Of course, this is an election year, so you're going to see some of that negative kind of discussion to try to create interest in different political candidates. A lot of them are going to come up with solutions that they think they are the only answer for. But we all know that script and that playbook. We know how it works. They're all liars, and they're all part of the same team to steal your wealth and destroy the nation as we know it. Let's read through the article here, take a quick look at what they have to say about today's movements. Stocks plunged Wednesday in the Dow Jones Industrial Average's worst performance of 2019 after the bond market flashed a troubling signal about the U.S. economy. The Dow dropped 800.49 points, or 3.05%. Looks like they misplaced a comma there because it dropped to 25,479.42. Although a Dow of 2,500 and change probably could occur sometime in the next 5 or 10 years, who knows. So that's the worst percentage drop of the year, the fourth largest point drop of all time. Look at that. The fourth largest drop of all time just happened. The S&P 500 fell 85.72 points, or 2.9%, and then the NASDAQ composite declined to 3%. The Dow gave up the entire rebound from a sell-off earlier in August and fell to a 2-month low. Let's take a look at our favorite metal, gold, the mainstay, the archaic and barbarous relic, real money. $1,532.30, up $4.50 today, up about 1/3%. Now, if you recall, over the last several years, this channel and its community, those of you out there, have been engaged in an information war, a battle, if you will, regarding the trajectory of gold, where it would head, what its value is, and a lot of the opposition ideas that we have had to deal with were always telling us that gold was heading for $700 or $800, that the values were overdone, overinflated. It did not hold a value at the ranges we were seeing it traded at, even $1,200 or $1,300, that it was set to plunge. It was done. It was obsolete. And, even Benjamin Bernanke was the one that was said, as you know, that the Fed only holds gold out of tradition. Well, over the last, what is this? We're looking at a 5-year chart here. And you can see back in 2016 is where we really saw that low. The lowest point in a long time. And it's been very well above the 1,100 mark, and then above the 1,200 mark. And then recently we've seen these moves where it breached 13 and then 1,400. And you can look at the chart here, you'll see that it wasn't that much time where it went from below 1,300 to now surpassing 1,500. So we're seeing gold pick up some steam and velocity here in its value compared to the fiat paper, the leper with the most fingers left, the US dollar. Focusing in a little further here, just on a 1-month chart, Now, here you look at the last 2 weeks of July. Gold's just kind of floating around at that 1425, 1400 range. And then all of a sudden, coming into August, we see it literally explode, passing through all of the 1400s in just a mere less than a week, and now surpassing 1500, hitting $1,532. As all of you are likely already aware and in agreement of, this movement in gold, this sudden velocity in behavior, flies in the face, absolutely defies the bears and those naysayers that were out there crying that gold was going to plummet, it held no value. Now think back on the last financial crisis. Think of where gold was, what it was valued at in dollars. It was below 500, 600, 700. It was hanging out in ranges that are unheard of today. It's literally $1,000 ago. And we're now, think of the quantitative easing, 1, 2, 3, and 4, the interest rates that were taking place that we've seen for the last decade. And now you see the Fed cutting rates recently. Again, it looks like they're moving towards further quantitative easing. They're going to ease up on credit and likely going to devalue the dollar. There's a currency war taking place. We've seen that before. Currency wars often leads to trade wars, and trade wars lead to shooting wars. Now, we've said that on this channel for the last several years. And what have we seen? Currency war and trade war is now top of the news, and we're seeing metals react. We're also seeing global friction taking place, the whole Iranian conflict. And I apologize, I've been gone for so long, it seems like, longer than normal just due to different events. But these are all circumstances that we've discussed in the past, and now a lot of them are rearing their ugly head. We're seeing global conflict. We're seeing talk of major global economic situations. We're seeing currencies being devalued. This incident with China, we're seeing the trade debacle take place, and gold naturally being the ultimate extinguisher of debt, real money, the only real value. It's doing what it does best, and it's rising in its valuation to those currencies, and will continue to do so in perpetuity. Let's take a look at gold's little brother, silver, up above $17 now, sitting at $17.31. This is a 6-month chart for silver. I know a lot of you were, quite depressed, quite down. Some of you maybe looking at silver prices, especially when it fell below that $15 mark. I know that's a big psychological valuation for silver for some people, just because they took large positions in that range over the years. But now here we see silver going in about June all the way through July and August, and rising above 15, rising above 16, and rising above $17. Similar chart pattern to gold, looking at coming into August. Even though silver, it looks like silver started its run even earlier than gold did. Starting there in July, we see silver really take off, bounce off that 15 mark, and surpass $16. It retreated a little bit there for a while, and then caught itself on the fall and exploded up past $17. So could we see silver up in the 20s again, $20, $25? It's likely. It's going to definitely piggyback onto gold's performance, and we're going to see silver react in ways that some of you have been waiting a very long time to see occur. So this is quite an exciting time for those with large positions in the precious metals. All of you know my position on the US dollar, and there's various reasons for that. But here's an article stating US dollar to lose stature in global race to devalue. Last Monday, the Treasury Department labeled China a currency manipulator. Of course, because the United States is not a currency manipulator, right? For depressing the yuan's exchange rate. It isn't clear whether that designation will have anything more than a symbolic effect, but the broader escalation of tensions around trade and the open talk by President Donald Trump of pursuing a weaker U.S. dollar. Imagine that, the head of a nation wanting to weaken its currency. This is making investors nervous. Some are seeking real value, provided by gold and silver. A recent JP Morgan report concludes that precious metals will continue to gain strength over time as the U.S. dollar's role in international trade steadily diminishes. These are key points that we've been bringing up and raising regarding the dollar and its relationship to gold over the last decade. And then here, let's finish the article and then we'll discuss it some further. In the coming decades, we think the world economy will transition from the U.S. and U.S. dollar dominance toward a system where Asia wields greater power. Oh, I got to interrupt again. Think back to the articles where we talked about the flow of wealth, the flow of gold to the east, to China. How many times did we discuss major movements in metals going to China? And we talked about the old story, the allegory that China had of the young king who was shoveling horse manure, and his desire to seek revenge, and how that's taught in all of the business schools in China, that you just hold your own, and they make their decisions based on broad generational movements. They don't think very as myopically as Americans do on just the here and the now. They don't have that narrow-minded mindset. They think about their grandchildren and great-grandchildren and seeking dominance generations from now. So think of that when it comes to in relationship to the timeline of these currencies and what's taking place, what we're looking at right now. And again, this is interesting to see JP Morgan discussing this and releasing articles and statements like this. I mean, that's something you would think you would read on these fringe sites or on a YouTube channel or in some boring community like on the JUNIUS MALTBY channel, the most boring channel on YouTube. Continuing on, they forecast that the U.S. dollar will likely lose value compared to a basket of other currencies, including precious metals, commodities like gold. So, again, key points, things we've been talking about for a long time, now coming to fruition. In a global race to devalue hard money should ultimately gain in terms of all major fiat currencies. Again, if you have a position in gold, a position in silver, you've been patient, you've been biding your time, you've just continued stacking, you've been ignoring the noise, the bird people in Wall Street, and all the distractions out there. You've alleviated debt, and you've accumulated a healthy position in precious metals. You will not only retain wealth and purchasing power, but you should go forward with a much stronger position than those around you who have likely either mocked or ignored people in your position. So there, we just saw JP Morgan predicting gold and silver rising in value to the US dollar going forward. Here's another one. This is Goldman Sachs is predicting gold to hit 1575 in 3 months, which it doesn't have that much further to go to hit those numbers. I mean, it could hit 1575 next week. And they're saying $1,600 in 6 months. So Goldman Sachs, bullish on the gold, looking at gold, rising in value. You know they're taking positions in it. You know JP Morgan's taking positions. We all know JP Morgan's situation and their position with silver. So all of this points to, again, silver, gold, rising in value, the dollar weakening. I mean, not only are they weakening the dollar on purpose, it's funny, it's almost like they know it's going to weaken, so they have to act like they're doing it on purpose just to save face and look like these architects and these maniacs that are on the controls of the economy aren't screwing up, aren't doing anything wrong. So if the dollar's losing value, they can say, oh, we're doing it on purpose, when in fact it's losing value because it's garbage, it's trash, it's unbacked fiat, and we all know where unbacked fiat goes. As Voltaire said, all fiat currencies return to their intrinsic value, and that is zero. So that's where the dollar's ultimately headed, zero. Just like Zimbabwe, just like Weimar, just like Venezuela, every single time it works out to be the same end result. Okay, so we know where it's going already. We knew this long ago. We knew this a decade ago. And it just takes time. It's the wheels of government, the wheels of the global economy turn slowly. That is until the train actually goes off the tracks, and by that time it's usually too late to react or to make the decision to purchase or find a position in precious metals. If you're in metals now, you're stacking now, you're doing good. But by the time the stuff really hits the news, by the time gold truly reacts to a deteriorating global economy and a deteriorating dollar, you won't have time. It'll be one of those events where you just wake up and the value of gold is prohibitive. Not only that, it won't be in your neighborhood coin store anymore. You're not going to be able to go down the street and buy a U.S. Gold Eagle. It won't be there. It will have been purchased, bought out, and hoarded away long before you made the journey to the store to exchange your worthless fiat for precious metals. Inching toward the cliff, why gold is soaring. The global economy is headed uncontrollably toward the proverbial cliff, although the central banks will once again attempt to defer this reality with more money printing and currency devaluation. Systemic collapse is fait accompli. Gold and silver are behaving in a way I have not observed in over 18 years of active participation in the precious metals sector. It's quite possible that this is being driven by the physical gold and silver markets, with the banks losing manipulative control over precious metals prices using derivatives. This article here discussing, again, the same type of situation, the same reality that we've been awaiting. And I'm not saying, and I don't know for certain if this is the event. It definitely seems to be close to that. Whether this is a tremor leading up to much larger quakes is yet to be seen, because a lot of us, we thought back in 2008 that was it. We thought we could call it, like this was it. There's no way they're pulling us out of this one. What if this situation is like that and they're able to resurrect it? I don't know. I do not know. However, we have to look at the differences between today and back then. We're already at near zero interest rates. We've already seen an expansion of the money supply through quantitative easing. So you wonder what safe measures, what stops do they have to pull now? What is their safety net? What options do the major economies hold to right this, to turn it around? I don't think they have very many. A lot of people are saying, oh, it's going to be crypto, or it's going to be this, or it's going to be that. I don't know. I think we'll wait for that. We'll wait. That's another video. We'll see what they do. Taking a quick look here at the top 100 crypto markets. We'll just look at the top 9 here, though. That's what the screenshot is anyway. Taking a huge collapse today. Just a major hit. Some of them, during the worst part of it, were down anywhere from 15 to 20%. Most of them averaging around down 10%. Bitcoin down 5.60, so 5.75%. You can see the charts on the right there. All of them steadily decline. You got XRP down to 26 cents. I believe it even hit 25 cents sometime today. So taking a hit with the markets. Whether or not some of the capital during the Dow's sell-off ends up finding refuge in crypto, I don't know. I don't know where this money's going. I don't know what's going on. All I know is people were really, really selling today. Today was quite a selling mood in the digital asset world, the crypto realm. So there you go, taking a heavy hit. We'll see how these turn out, which ones are able to come up from this in the coming weeks. Whether or not this was a major fishing expedition, a whaling expedition, whether it was a plunge to knock stop losses out, knock off some weak hands so that financial institutions could grab up more of it in preparation for a collapse. I mean, there's all kinds of theories you could have out there. I've read and heard them all. I don't know what the ultimate situation is surrounding these. However, today definitely was a shake for some of those with heavy interests in this realm. And I would be doing an injustice to the JUNIUS MALTBY channel if we didn't touch on this subject. Epstein, the molestor, the rapist, the pedophile, the dear friend of the elite. This financier, this friend of the Clintons, who had lots of information on lots of the wealthy, lots of the elite, and lots of the powerful, and their debauchery and their degeneracy. We now see that he has somehow hung himself in a cell and shot himself in the back of the head several times, apparently committing the act of suicide. Now, I don't know for certain if I buy that story. I just don't. And there's so much in this. It's such a layered story about this. My dad's been talking about this individual and the Lolita Express for decades. Everyone knew it was happening. No one cared. No one did anything about it. And then suddenly it became big news. A 2,000-page paper is released with tons of names, lots of information. There's lots of people tied up in this. And then he, the next day, expires. This is a very deep situation. I think the tentacles of it go far and wide in the highest levels of power. I think that this is just the very tip of the iceberg of what these people are capable of, those at the helm of control and power. And it's quite disgusting. If you remember, there's a video on this channel, you can look it up, called You're Just a Peasant, and we touch on the different rules for the ruling elite compared to those of us down here, us serfs and plebes. There's so much about Epstein that bothers me. One of them is he's a financier, right? Everyone calls him a financier, a very wealthy individual, but nobody knows where he got his money from. Imagine that for a moment. A guy that's worth as much as he is, measured in the billions, who has his own private island, his own jet, and flies around with the most powerful people in the world to cater to their carnal desires and entertain them. Nobody knows where he got his money from. And everyone's concerned about the tax returns for a president or tax returns for this guy. And everyone's always really interested in finding out the financial information of other individuals. But nobody was talking about the financial background for Jeffrey Epstein, where he got his money from. Did it come from his homeland? Did it come from those that were seeking to gain influence and get next to those in power and using him as basically a pawn on their chessboard to seek out influence with the world governments and to get dirt on the world's leaders so that they could bend their arm and get their way? There's definitely, I think, reason to believe that's quite possible, that he was a tool and put into a position to be allowed to engage in this behavior, to be financially supported to engage in this behavior in order to rope in the world's leaders, to have dirt on them, to be able to control their decisions, their votes, and ultimately, from the shadows, govern the world, quite possibly. Well, now when the cat's out of the bag and they no longer have a use for him, they suicide him. Well, that's it for the news this evening. One last little announcement. I'm glad to be back. Appreciate everyone who's been waiting patiently. Here we are. We'll be doing these videos, I think, more frequently now. I have become more established and capable of doing so. One thing to bring up here at Quality Silver Bullion, I was in contact with them recently, and one thing is it's difficult for them to take orders on this coin in small batches, the JUNIUS MALTBY Silver Round, because they mint them and then they wait for orders to come in and then they'll mint them in batches. So we're talking about doing a final run, a closing out run, the last minting of the 1 ounce Maltby round. If you're familiar with the channel, if you're familiar with this coin, you know what it represents, what it means, the symbolism behind it, and the work that went into developing and bringing this coin about. Those of you that are part of the channel, it was because of you that this coin even came to be. There's going to be a final mintage. We'll probably do a video just on that, but this is kind of the precursor announcement for that. So if you want these, if you want to start placing orders now, we're going to do the last run. And the mintage, I don't think it's very much. My guess is less than 2,000 Maltby rounds were ever struck. Again, less than 2,000. We'll find out from QSB how many it truly is. I'll try to get that number for you guys soon. I'll include that in the next video. And this will be the final minting, the final run. So pay attention to that. If you have not yet ever gotten one and you're part of the community, you're part of the JUNIUS MALTBY channel and you want one, This is going to be the last chance to buy them from QSB and fresh off the mint. I'm going to see what they're going to do with the dies. I'd like to get the dies, being that I had the dies made, and they do belong to me, in my opinion. I purchased them, had them engraved, of course, with the help of those on this channel. So that's how we'll guarantee they won't be struck anymore. We'll get the dies, I'll have them here, and that's it. The final mintage of the Junius Maltby round. So that'll close it out for this evening. I appreciate everyone out there taking part in the most boring channel on YouTube. If you'd like to make a contribution, there's always little contribution links down below to keep the channel going and keep my head above water. We also have the Patreon account. If you guys know about Patreon, I do have a Patreon account set up. It's out there. You can look that up as well. But again, thanks for being part of the JUNIUS MALTBY channel, and I will see you on the next one.